we're live.
Here.
Can you hear us? Is this working?
Yeah, we can hear you.
That's a great earpiece.
Can you see the California Theater? The majestic California Theater behind us?
Are you commenting on my earpiece?
I did. And I wanted to see how time delayed it was.
Yeah, I told Sam this wasn't hanging properly, but he ignored me completely.
No, you look like you're in
so
the
we're
Secret
outside
Service.
the California Theater. I am in the Secret Service.
Yes.
I didn't tell you, did I?
This is the time delay.
So we're outside the California Theater in San Jose. If you guys would shut up, that'd be great. I've got a lot of stuff to say. And we just got done with the event. We just got done handling all of the new gear.
A jam-packed event.
Jam-packed event, and
full of stuff.
Also full of people. Very tight inside the event.
Yeah.
So what do you want to know? What's on your mind right now? What's the heated discussion that's happening right now in living rooms across America?
Well, we can argue numbers and specs and stats all we want, and we have, and also Les Miserables, but we'll get to that later. Josh, Nilay, what I want to know is, how does it feel? Let us live vicariously through you.
You said it's like a level above the Nexus 7 and Kindle Fire HD. Like that's a big claim.
And what does that even mean?
Question.
Yeah. It blows away the Nexus 7 and really any other 7-inch tablet or something in this range that's on the market. I mean, it's thinner. It's lighter. It feels like extremely solid. I mean, hey, imagine if Apple made a 7-inch or so iPad, and you get an idea of what it feels like.
The closest thing is it feels like the build quality is like the iPhone. Like they made a much bigger iPhone. And same technique, same materials.
And it is kind of a hybridized design in between the iPad, the last generation iPad, and the iPhone. It's got the chamfered edge, and it's got the black backing like the iPhone, but the actual body design feels a lot like the...
It's rounded off.
Yeah, it's rounded off. It's like the 3rd-gen iPad or 4th-gen iPad. It just feels really nice, and the screen looks really great. I will say this, the screen resolution looks better than it does on the iPad 2. A smaller screen, you get tighter pixel density. I think it looks a lot better. I did get a chance to hold it next to my Nexus 7, and I think the screen quality is better, but you definitely see more pixels on the iPad Mini than on the Nexus 7. So, I mean, it's not as high resolution, it's not as high pixel density as some of its competition.
But I will say the Nexus 7 has a pretty okay average screen.
Yeah, very average.
It's pretty washed out, and the actual quality of the images on the new iPad, the iPad Mini.
The blacks were much deeper. The colors popped a lot more. I mean, qualitatively speaking, it's a nicer display, but pixel density-wise, as I wish Paul Miller could hear right now, it definitely suffers a little bit.
Lower resolution, bigger screen.
It's lower res screen, it's a little bit bigger. But I will say, the device feels like an Apple product. It feels nicer than something like even the iPod Touch, which you guys have played with the new iPod Touch. It feels higher quality than that. It feels like a step above that. So I think in terms of materials and design, weight, and just general quality, it's way beyond what they're doing with the Nexus 7 or even with the Kindle. And they do feel like toys in comparison.
But what's interesting is that at $329, it doesn't feel like they're necessarily competing against the Nexus 7 directly or the Kindle Fire HD directly. Because I think there's still a huge market for $199 products.
I actually think that in a lot of ways, and Avi Greengard, who's here with us, I'm looking at him right now, who's going to join us in a second, talked about, we were just talking about the price point, and I do think that there is something to, this is almost like, you know what, I was going to buy an iPad too, or maybe I was even thinking about getting the big iPad, but I don't know if I want something that big, but I do want to have all the apps. And I feel like that's a different question than if you say, well, I want a $200 tablet I can throw in my bag or use for reading.
I mean, it's definitely, it feels bigger to hold and use than the Nexus 7, by far.
That could be because it's actually bigger.
I mean, it is actually
it's bigger,
but
physically.
It's thinner.
It is thinner. Can something be bigger and smaller at the same time?
There's laws of physics.
Sure, why not?
Laws of physics are more like suggestions. Right?
But you'll see. I mean, I think people are going to freak out for it. Just when we were here at the event, it's hard to capture how bonkers the crowd went when Phil Schiller, cued the video that showed the big iPad rotating to show the smaller iPad behind it. People freaked out.
I mean, there were a lot of Apple people in the audience.
There were a lot of Apple
in
people
defense
in the audience.
of the audience,
I was sitting next to an Apple person who was like, she couldn't restrain herself.
Tears to the eyes.
She wanted to continually leap up and start applauding.
But I do think I do think there is something. This is a new product for them. We've seen iterative products for a while now. The iPhone was an iterative version of the previous iPhone. This is a different product. It has different uses. It's a new form factor for them. You know, they haven't done, yes, it's an iPad, and yes, it's just a smaller iPad, but it is new. And we haven't actually seen a lot of new stuff. Like even the MacBook Pro with the Retina display, the 13-inch is just an iteration of the 15-inch.
Well, I actually have a lot to say about the MacBook Pro.
Well, we're not going to
let's get to the iPad
But
Mini
here's my
first.
question. I think this is...
Yeah.
But so
you go
here's,
first.
I think, the most important question for Apple. They've got iPhone apps and they've got iPad apps, and they're saying it's every inch an iPad. You can just run all these iPad apps on this new screen size. But the one thing that they've proven is that targeting apps towards a particular screen size is like the path to success.
Yeah.
Right. That's the problem Android's had.
Yeah.
Where the apps work in every screen size, they're not completely targeted. It's kind of a mess.
Right.
Do you think they're going to start targeting apps towards the iPad mini screen size, or it will just always be a slightly shrunken iPad?
Nilay,
Well,
let me.
that's an interesting question, and I think that...
Let me. We have actually an interesting thing. We talked about this with. I don't. You know what? I can talk now. This is fun. Actually, we get to control this a little bit.
No, go ahead.
So we talked to Andrew Allen. He's a 53 designer.
Ross has gone mad with power.
You've missed the last hour. It's been wonderful. We talked to Andrew Allen, the 53 designer. He does the paper app. He made an interesting point that the touch spots on the apps are smaller. You can't obviously design different from the iPad Mini to the iPad Retina displays. All you can do is change the assets. So where you're touching is now much smaller for every iPad app. Do you think that's going to be an issue?
Well, no,
with the apps?
actually... I was actually going to comment on that to your point and to that point, and I mentioned it in the write-up of the hands-on. The keyboard in Portrait feels really squished. It feels really little. I mean, it's like they've just scaled down that keyboard in it, so it's not as tall. And as a result, it does feel like the touch points are a little bit harder to get at least in that case. Sorry, I'm getting a call, of course. That makes sense. But I do think that there's going to be some touch points and some stuff to consider that are going to feel a little bit awkward on the smaller device. But when you think about your favorite iPad apps, how many of them involve you hunting around trying to tap on a little button?
Right.
It's really like, the back button or a couple of the interface buttons at the bottom. I mean, most of the iPad apps I use and know are relatively spacious. And sometimes even too spacious.
Yeah.
Thank God this iPad Mini exists. I'm so sick of the screen real estate of the iPad, the third generation iPad. It really is going to be a breath of fresh air to not have as much to look at.
That's right.
Thank you, Apple. No, but I do think that's a concern, and I think that, look, people are going to complain about it, but I don't think it's as. I think it's less of a concern than having to take a phone app and put it on a 7-inch or 10-inch tablet. And I think, like, if Android's problem is that, like, you have to scale up a phone app, and Apple's problem is you have to scale down an actual iPad app for a slightly smaller iPad, I'd rather have Apple's problem than the Android problem.
Yeah, and I get the feeling, I was surrounded by developers, actually, at this event. Apple had brought a lot of developers here, and I get the feeling that they're priming them to have the apps work better across devices.
Priming the pump. Yeah.
I mean, Apple spent a lot of time today, Tim Cook in particular, spent a lot of time hyping the app advantage that Apple has. 275,000 iPad apps.
Yeah.
At one point, very out of character for Apple, he compared the iPad Mini directly to the Nexus 7. It was pretty brutal. He went right at it. He went all the way to "this is a piece of crap" and stopped.
Well, they did.
He was like waving at that line from across the abyss.
I will say this: they did the comparison of the Twitter app on Android a couple of events ago. Maybe when they announced the new new old iPad, which is, by the way, only 6 months old. I was actually kind of surprised. I thought it was really telling that Apple was directly responding to the Nexus 7. I mean, this product is saying, they said without question during the presentation, here's our competition.
Yeah. Here's the best Android tablet.
Here's the best Android tablet, and here's what we're competing against, and here's where it has deficiencies, and here's where we're going to win. I'm actually surprised that they weren't able to step in and say, like, Apple has this kind of bravado where they can walk into a market that already exists and go, like, it's the first ever in this, that's ever been designed. Like they will tell you they created the tablet market, which they basically did, the modern tablet market. They would never mention there have been, other tablets or older tablets, or that there was some. I mean, let's not even think about the old tablets, but I do think it's interesting that they had to respond, and that this is a response in some way to the desire in the market for a smaller tablet.
Right, and I think again, with the pricing stuff, they made whatever product they wanted at this size and said people are going to buy it at $329 instead of trying to get to $199.
Yeah.
And I feel like Google with the Nexus 7 spent a lot of time and energy getting it to $199 because that's how they had to compete.
I think $129 gulf between these two products is not insignificant. I think there's still going to be people, and the Fire HD as well.
Yeah.
There's still going to be people who say, I don't want to spend. They're going to look at it and go like, oof, it's almost like $400 to buy this. You know, $330 that's not almost $400, but you know what I mean.
But
it's closer to $400 than $200.
But the vibe,
you can't disagree with that. You could not deny that.
But the vibe of this event, I mean, this compared to the iPhone event,
much bigger.
The iPhone event was bigger, but it was far more subdued.
This was bigger.
You think this was bigger?
I thought this was a bigger event. I thought that it was
it had more stuff.
I thought that it was a more exciting event for them.
Yeah.
They seemed more energized about this. I mean, Phil Schiller was like excitedly.
Yeah.
I mean, he was actually moving quickly through something.
They were rushing. So you know, Ross, the last time at the iPhone event, when you take pictures, you get a very keen sense of how fast they're moving.
Right.
So I took pictures of the iPhone event, and they moved very slowly.
Yeah.
They rushed through some things, but it was very on point.
They drew it out.
This one they were moving so fast that I couldn't take a picture of every slide they showed, which is an absolute rarity for an Apple event.
Yeah.
Because usually they actually just go through all the bullets.
No,
and then Tim Cook is usually very good about standing in front of the slide and smiling at me, so I can take and none of that happens.
They were moving considerably faster, and I thought that the general mood. First off, I think this space was, it was obviously very dramatic, big old theater like this. But I just felt like the mood of everybody on the Apple team and on stage just seems to be like everybody's really excited about this product.
Yeah.
I feel like more excited than the iPhone 5.
Yeah.
I think, and maybe it's because it's new, maybe it's because it's a different place. Maybe they're loosened up by doing 2 events within a month of each other. They're just ready to go. But I thought the excitement was palpable.
Yeah. And the hands-on here was just out of control. I mean, it was a smaller, because it's a theater and not one of their more traditional conference venues, it was a really small, packed hands-on. They basically built an Apple store.
Yeah.
Upstairs.
A very narrow Apple store.
A very small Apple store.
Yeah.
And it was like Lord of the Flies
it was like
in there
an
to get the
Apple
iPad
store
Mini.
in a New York subway.
Yeah.
If you can imagine, not the restaurant, an actual subway car.
But no, I mean, there was just this enormous flood of people to see this thing, and in a much more excitable way than I think I've seen with the iPhone or other products.
It was frankly terrifying, and I feared for my life.
I killed a man.
I killed 2.
I was hungry.
I got to one up you. So I actually have to.
Go.
I have to go. Unfortunately, I may be back, but I have to break away for a moment, and we also want to bring Avi out. So I'm going to switch off. Any questions for me before I jet? Do you guys want to know anything? Is there anything that Josh Topolsky can tell you that another person couldn't?
I think we're good, Josh. I think Nilay can answer everything.
On?
Oh, we're still on. I do want to ask Nilay a little bit about maps later, since we didn't actually get to hear about that. But he can rage for you.
Completely done with me.
Yeah,
we're done.
We're done.
Go away.
Goodbye.
You don't care at all.
Get out of here,
need
Josh.
Me. That's
Nope.
really.
Avi, come over here.
You really feel.
Ross, I'm gonna interview Avi for a couple of minutes, and then I can answer all the rest of your questions.
You do your thing. We're gonna sit back here.
Attached to me.
Don't mind us.